Yeah, it's coming now.
Oh
Okay.
yeah,
Stream
Welcome,
is live.
welcome to our new global media talk show. Today is January 26, 2025. Today we're gonna be talking about the Gambia's diplomatic relation with West. Gambia diplomatic relation with West. We have our guest here, Kemo Fati. Kemo, welcome to the show.
thank you so much, Mr. Sawaneh, and thank you, Sam, for the invitation. I also wanna thank my colleague, Ousmana. He's been a wonderful friend and a brother, since inception. And I really can't wait to have this fruitful discussion with all of you here regarding what matters to our country.
Thank you, thank you.
Very good.
So we learned that you are in Pennsylvania. So if you can just give us a little bit background of you, who is Kemo Fati. So we know there are many Kemo Fatis in the Gambia. So we want to know this particular one.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's one of the most difficult challenges I always have when people ask me to introduce myself. But just to keep it short, Kemo Fadi was born and raised in the Lower Fuladu West, in Pachar, more commonly known as Jahali Pachar. I know most of you know it that way. So attended St. Teresa's Basic Cycle School in Fulabantang, then moved to Nusrat Senior Secondary School for my high school diploma and to University of the Gambia, Political Science, and was lucky to be part of the student government too, serve as the president of the Social Sciences and Humanities Student Association. And finally, 2022, was lucky to have a scholarship to study at Pennsylvania State University at the School of International Affairs, and that's where I studied international affairs. But I specialize in international public policy and have another minor with that. That is the U.S.-China Africa relations. Given my interest, in African politics and global politics as well. So finally, I am here in Harrisburg. Still now as an international student, but I'm working with my OPT, that is the optional practical training here in Harrisburg. Yeah, so pretty much that is Kemo.
Wow, wow. Yeah, you have a long list of
That's
things
good.
to speak about. Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
So I
thank
sent you
you.
the link on your WhatsApp if you want me
Oh,
to
you
yeah.
I don't want to interrupt.
So you can share. You can share with. Oh, he went. He went. He left.
Oh, it went to WhatsApp. Okay, all right. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you. I think you turn off the video.
Oh, it's coming on.
Yeah. So your subject, your specific area of specialty is really needed in the Gambia. As you know, our diplomatic relationship, our our international relation is really lacking in our country. So this is really a very important area. Can you
Right,
hear
right.
us, Kimo? But we cannot see you though. Did you turn off the camera?
Can you see me now?
No, no, no. I think your camera is off somehow.
Trying to come on.
Okay. Yeah. So you back. Okay.
Okay, now. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Right into the subject. So our topic today is about the Gambia's relationship with the West. Right. So you're gonna give us an insight of this, and we will be asking questions and having comments
Right.
if we have to. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I think what really defines or characterizes Gambia's diplomatic relation or foreign policy is, for me, basically events that happened. And I think, particularly myself, I will not do justice to this topic if I do not kind of illuminate on the Gambia's political history and how the foreign policy shaped the dynamics of our politics. And I try to use some different models, analysis to understand this perspective from Jawara's regime to Drammeh to now Adama Barrow. But what we witnessed during the Jawara's regime was really very, very interesting. And key events that we saw rising on the Jawara was kind of complicated because one, Jawara was fighting to make sure that we have the territorial recognition from independence, but also try to make sure that we attract fundings from external donors to develop some of the objectives and goals that he wants to establish for the country. I remember one of the famous quotations was made, at his funeral ceremony in 2019 August. This was made by Sidia Jada, who quoted Sada Kairaba Jawara, that during the struggle for independence, he once said that the Gambia would never remain in the backwaters of Africa's advent if the entire continent is heading to independence except Gambia. So that was a very bold and assertive statement. You understand? It shows that the Gambia is capable enough, to take charge of its responsibility and be responsible of its own territorial boundaries. So that said, the fight continues, from 1965, to 1970 when we became independent. But Jara, of course, also faced a lot of challenges because one of the external funding that Gambia had then basically was our colonial masters, the UK. It was only the United Kingdom that was very, very open to Gambia in terms of foreign policy. And people would say then even one British pound is equivalent to $1. I did not know about that. We didn't witness that, but some of you probably would know. So the UK had a very strong tie, with the Republic of the Gambia, because Sarara was just moving forward from independence to becoming a Republican, state. And these were moments too when a lot of people, doubt Gambia would make it. A lot of pessimism, from independence, because this was a country less than 500,000 people at independence. So negotiations went on to see if Gambia could be part of Senegal. So fighting for that territorial recognition from independence to becoming a republican was really very, very hard for Sada Kairaba Jawara. But we eventually made it. So now we are the smiling coast of Africa. So looking at it from a vantage point, you will understand that the struggle started, long ago. And we had to prove to the global world that we can really stand alone. And then, yes, we can. And to Jammeh, 1994, when Jawara ruled the country from 1970 as a president to July 1994, we took a very dramatic U-turn that was quite unexpected. Because during Jawara's time, from 1970 towards 1994, the Gambia we saw, was a Gambia that is one of the most multi-party democracies in Africa. You can only compare Gambia with Zimbabwe, but even Ghana's democracy in Nigeria was not stronger than the way we have in Gambia. We were operating on the multi-party democratic system, and that is why we have the Human Rights Commission established in Gambia in the early 1980s. So taking that shift, from 1994 to 2016 was also another U-turn that the country took, very unexpected. So while Jawara was fighting for territorial recognition and having that fund to maximize benefit, to move the country forward, Jammeh came in as an isolated president because this was a leader that was rejected by the Western nations. And that is why our diplomatic relations with the West was kind of very, very assertive, but also very, very frosty during Jammeh's regime because it wasn't strong. And because the British rejected him as a leader, the global world didn't want to recognize Gambia because this was a democratic country. So they rejected Jammeh's leadership. So Jammeh was basically fighting for two things again. Jammeh was basically fighting for what we call, legitimacy, but at the same time fighting to have funds, to attract funds too. That's where we have a similarity between Jammeh and Jawara. Jawara was fighting for territorial recognition to put Gambia in global image. But Jammeh was fighting for his own legitimacy as a leader, that he must be accepted, despite the fact that he came through a coup. So, but they have a similarity, that is attracting, external funds. But Jammeh's administration was a bit ugly, and then things were a little bit tight for Gambia. Jammeh did not want to resign and go back to the barracks, as the British and the Western nations suggested. So the World Bank, the IMF got ties with Gambia. The United Kingdom also got ties with Gambia. So a lot of severing relationship happened between the Gambia and the West. And then Jammeh moved on, and then he shifted, to have an alignment with the Asian countries, particularly Taiwan. Because from the early 1980s towards 1994, the Gambia we saw, the China we saw was a different China, was a China that was very, 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 very friendly with the United States. because United States was using the one China policy, kind of trying engaging China, in a broader policy perspective, to make sure that they can contain Taiwan, because for them Taiwan was going to be the next global power. So in order to contain Taiwan, it was okay for the U.S. to recognize China, to engage China against the communists, Russia, and of course Japan. So Gambia was basically, having that relationship with China until Jammeh came in 1994. Despite the fact that China did not reject Jammeh, but they also did not want to continue given their relationship with the West then. So Jammeh used what we call, procedural, rationality. I will delve into that later when we get into broader perspective of Jammeh's foreign policy. So Jammeh's rationality was that since, I cannot get the Westerns and they didn't want to recognize me as a leader, it's better to move on with with Taiwan and other, African countries like Libya. So Jammeh shifted our foreign policy. And that was kind of a smart strategy, because if Jammeh resigned then and went back to Barras, what we will see, is that Jammeh will eventually be arrested, because what he did was legally was very, very treasonous. So he will not be accepted. So the good strategy that he can do is to make sure that, while these people rejected me, it's better, I form an alignment with other countries that are also kind of, looking for other global recognition, because Taiwan was also looking for a recognition. And given their economic prosperity, as a nation, it was okay for Zambia to shift from the West, to Eastern Asia. So that policy strategy, that policy foreign policy, really helped Jambe a lot, to make sure that some of the development cooperation that he needed, have been asserted. So from 1995, towards 1996, Taiwan gave Gambia around 35 million US dollars, and that money really helped Gambia to call for an election in 1996. So basically, that was a very good strategy. Gambia was able to have those development funds to prove to the Gambian people that yes, we can still stand alone, despite the Western funders. That helped Gambia. So Gambia campaigned in 1996, and he won. And now the British, the Commonwealth, the World Bank, the IMF again accepted Gambia, because now they are seeing him as a civilian, a leader. So I think that rationality, that rational decision, was something for me that was very, very positive, because that was only, option that he could pursue, and he eventually made it. So coming down to the Barrow administration, the event we saw on the Barrow was the post dictatorship and post coalition. You understand what happened after Gambia? What kind of Gambia the world want to see, after dictatorship?
Right.
And then eventually we saw, political parties that have not been together for a quite long time and remaining oppositions eventually came together in 2016 to form a coalition to make sure that Gambia is out. And that moment too was quite very, very interesting. The world was eager to see what kind of Gambia is going to produce now, from struggle to independence to taking a U-turn to dictatorship and now to democracy. So basically, things were really very, very interesting. So the kind of Gambia presented to us in 2017 after the elections was Gambia that is going through reforms and restructuring programs. And to be honest with you, I think the best national development plan that I have ever read, is that national development plan that was developed by the Gambian elites in 2018. Very, very perfect on paper. But just like one of my colleagues will say from Penn State, that Gambians are literally very good with, writing, policy papers, but in practical, we don't do nothing. So the post-coalition too was also a very shocking moment, because these 8 political parties, with one independence that kind of promised us that they're going to provide a Gambia, under a 3-year rule, where all political parties will come together, implement their policies, their programs, stuff like that, did not eventually materialize. So you see, Gambian politics is based on events: independent effect, the coup effect, and the coalition effect. So if you compare the 3 overall and see which one among these 3 kind of attract, or bolster Gambia's foreign policy, I will at some point, tell you that Gambia's policy was quite very, very difficult, but he made it at some point, and the West came back again to him. Barrow was the luckiest person in terms of forming that, collaboration and partnership with the Western nations. but yet, he achieved very little. So these were kind of, moments that really defined the structure, of our foreign policy from, 1965 to 1994 to 2016, to what we are witnessing now. And very recently, I think Barrow was really lucky in many aspects, because when Gambia shifted again, when we went back to democracy, the new dispensation, we attracted a lot of people, from international institutions, financial institutions, global corporations, our partnership with the West. Everything was strengthened. Gambia went back to Commonwealth. The EU increased their funding for Gambia. So we had a lot of different entry points. But at some point, again, it didn't go well with us because Gambia was at some point distracted on the Barrow administration. You understand? A lot of funds were coming from different sectors, but Gambia did not, we could not even understand which kind of areas we're going to prioritize. We were talking about the TRRC, we were talking about the Jana Commission, drinking justice. So you have all these, international interventions in our countries with their own priorities coming up, but Gambia could not provide a blueprint, that will map out our, our foreign policy strategy to attract these funds. Because you have some organizations like the EU is basically interested in bringing Gambia to justice. And that is why they spent millions of dollars in our TRRC program. So you have some organizations like World Bank and then IMF that are very interested in financial, transparency. They pumped a lot of money in our Jana Commission whatsoever. So you have, European Union too that are kind of interested in, immigration stuff like that. They had deals with Gambia to make sure that some Gambians that are in the UK, that are in Spain, Italy, are brought back. So you have a lot of entry points. So we have the ECOWAS too, kind of interested in security sector reform. So you look at all these dynamics, all these sectors. Where did we do well so far? Where you cannot even tell. So it's like we were basically using all these angles, but we could not have a focused area where we would make an immediate intervention, and change the status quo. So right now, if I would tell you, Barrow, foreign policy blueprint is not very directive, and then it's really distracted the country a lot, and we are not getting what we need to have. Yeah.
Thank you. So we would pause here. I know it's a lot of things you said, and we would probably like look into each of these three republics that you mentioned.
Right.
And the first thing that I want to say is that you analyze Barrow's, I mean, post coalition effect, and then coup effect. But the post independent effect. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because what is your take on that?
Oh, okay. So the post-independence effect, like I mentioned briefly, for me, it was one of the most, difficult moment for the Gambia, because like I said, Gambia was then under Jaura as the prime minister, was focusing on two things. That is after independence, having that territorial recognition, that is forced, being recognized forced as a country, even though we were giving our own independence, but we were still fighting to fit ourselves in global stage. You understand? So that territorial, recognitions whatsoever, and then having the needed form, to move ahead with these policy plans. And in the early 1980s too, Gambia was also very lucky, to be part of the structural adjustment program, the economic recovery program, and that happened in the early 1980s, shortly before in the 1981 coup, where we lost almost 500 Gambians with 33 Senegalese soldiers being killed under the Kukoy Sambasanyang, intervention. So those independent effects also kind of affect Gambia a little bit more, because the struggle there, left and right, meeting dignitaries, presenting our policy documents, our policy papers, to the United Nations, joining Commonwealth, having that recognition, pursuing democracy, building on structures. So Sarada was basically focusing on all these issues, and what he achieved the most was Gambia being one of the best, democratic systems, in global Africa. Like I said, it was only Botswana and Gambia that you can compare then as few countries in Africa that pursued, multi-party democratic system. Freedom of speech was also something that Jawara championed, and that is why we were lucky to have the, Human Rights Commission established in Gambia, giving his strong and commitment towards human rights issues and democracy. So, in terms of our economic prosperity under Jawara, it wasn't that much, strong, but Gambia's by far and large, and of course to a very large extent, did not struggle much, to have food on the table. You know, um, Most of the issues, most of the things, materials, goods, whatsoever, the commerce is not, that expensive, and most of the things that we had then were produced in Gambia. The groundnut was at high age, so rice production too was booming. So you had all those opportunities. The relationship with the West too was also very, very booming. So even though on the Jara, one thing that his critics would say that he didn't do, no, he didn't do well was the country security sector, because Jawara's fear of being overthrown, was what even led to the 1994 coup d'etat, because we did not have a professional military system that will protect our territorial integrity. You understand? So that was lacking, and Jawara thought that having that, in a very juvenile country like the Gambia, would probably contribute to coup, stuff like as it was happening in other part of Africa, like other African countries were doing. So basically, he ignored that part until 1981 when we saw Kuka Samba Sanyang intervened, where we lost a lot of Gambians. So that also culminated to the formation of the Senegambia Federation. We had a very strong partnership with Senegal. We formed that military collaboration with them to make sure that they also kind of serve as a security umbrella for our country. Because then in the early 1960 towards 1970 towards 80s, our field forces, because then that's what we had. Some people will call them gendarmeries. They were less than 200 people. It was only 140 people. So after having that security cooperation with Senegal, our first intervention at global stage was the war in Liberia in the early 1990 towards 1991, where we had about 60 to 50 Gambian troops also joining the peacekeeping the peacekeeping issue in Liberia, but as very inexperienced soldiers then. So security was an issue on the Jawara. So when Jambe came into power in 1994, Jambe, was that kind of archetypical, leader who like imposing stuff, but also try to protect himself. So Jambe was basically trying to build on a structure, within his own, sector. Because having that military background, it was very important for him, first of all, to protect himself and how he can serve himself for a longer time. So he built this structure very well. He tried to professionalize, our military, system. Even though this was kind of being protective towards him rather than the civilians, but security was better, during Jambe's time than what we, saw in Jawara's time, and even now with Barrow, even though we have the economic forces, I always complain that you cannot entrust your security, on a sister country. That is quite very, very detrimental, to our growth, to our security. So Gambia is still grappling with having a, stable, professionalized security sector, even though there are reform process going on, but yet nothing materialized.
Very good, very good. All right, so that answered that question. I know with Jawara, we spoke that he was focusing on trying to make sure that the territory is recognized, and then at that time things were not, like the things were not that hard on Gambians because agriculture was like as resourceful. You have the the peanut transportation. I mean peanuts exportation. I mean peanut peanut was
Export, yeah. Mhm.
exported, and we have a lot of things going on. So people were not feeling the feeling hungry and all of those. So that was a plus because the way we transitioned from colonial from being colonized to having our independence, that
Right.
Gambia. So there the international relationship or the foreign relationship is not of a higher demand, only to make sure that we can rule ourselves. That was the key idea on that. Now, since we passed that, we got to a point where, like with Jammeh, we were moving. Now Jammeh came as a military and did something that was illegal by overthrowing a sovereign, government. Now he has to fight for. I mean, he has to fight for his legitimacy, to make sure that he could be accepted. That and he was successful in doing that when he was
Right.
rejected by others, like you said. And with all that said and done, with Barrow, I think with Barrow, there were many opportunities are very vast with Barrow, because
So much opportunities. Yeah.
yeah, so because now we overcame dictatorship. Now we are recognized, right? So it's like right now taking the country to another level. Now people are willing to put money in, like you said, transitional justice, reform policies. So the borough is borough's administration has so much that could have changed Gambia for good, because people were, donors, and then other, countries were really looking forward.
We are really interested. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly, because Gambia has demonstrated something
Right.
by voting out a dictator. But what actually went wrong with Barrow administration in not able to, make this, connections? Because I remember Brussels meeting where they were promised tons of money,
Mhm.
all this, like money that we were out there to grab. What has made them fail? And then is it that the money was given and then they couldn't spend it, wisely, or they they did something with the money? I mean, the funds. Why is it that our international relationship is not strengthened right now, to the point that even some diplomats were sent out of the United States because of some mishaps? And also United States has questioned the financial transparency of Gambia governments, and many other countries were questioning that.
Yeah.
What do you think
So
happens there? Then,
so yes,
if they are
with
given
Barrow,
us?
like I said, I call it a complete diplomatic distraction. With his administration, opportunities came in just like you said. Promises were made. Pledges were also made. Some went successfully through. There were moments even in 2018, Barrow will say in his Mandinka-thon that even, from Barrow na fendu the Gambia. So, we had a system that was quite okay. The then Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hussein Odabo, was basically, busy traveling everywhere, you know, trying to make sure that Gambia rejoined, some of those, international institutions, organizations that Jambi, caught ties with. So that short duration really established a lot of opportunity, for Gambia to grow. You understand? But with the political stuff going on, among political parties, and eventually um, we saw that a very complete political divorce between, these political parties, with Barrow announcing himself, as the as NPP leader. Most of the coalition counterparts, left the party. Some of them remained. So there were a lot of, you know, irrational choices. Like I mentioned during Jambe's time, what I consider an achievement for Jambe was the intervention he made. Choosing Taiwan or choosing the East Asia over the West was a rational decision. But Barrow's approach, to be honest with you, was quite very irrational because none of his immediate policy intervention plans were achieved. You know, Migration still now is still very worse in Gambia. The record still getting high. And like I said, you have the EU, but EU also have always have a specific area of intervention that they are interested in. So they don't just pump money in the Gambia. They want to make sure that while they are helping Gambia, Gambia also abide by some of those policies and programs that they want to establish in Gambia, making sure that the issue of immigration whatsoever, people migrating to Italy or to Germany to some other countries, are brought back to the Gambia or the issue be stopped immediately. So you have other organizations too that are just interested in transitional justice process. So basically, I think it's quite big diplomatic failure, for not projecting the kind of foreign policy that we want to achieve within this short period of time. Just rather than focusing on different areas and eventually not doing anything. So I think that diplomatic distraction kind of affect Barrow administration a lot, and then with some of the political appointments that were made to foreign countries, so not putting merits before anything was also something that kind of also contributed, making sure that Gambia's foreign policy remain decline. Countries not recognizing us to a very large extent. With all those factors being constant. So I think that miscalculation and then the lack of political will too, to move forward with the agenda that they promised the country, is also part of reasons why probably Barrow administration is not doing very very well, to make sure those funds are utilized in a manner that is expected from international communities. Because the Human Rights Commission whatsoever, the United Nations, the IMF cannot continue funding, funds that will go through corruption, fighting against corruption whatsoever, if the Gambia is not, you know, or doesn't even establish, a center, that will have an executive to address some of these issues. How can we kill that? So, the EU cannot continue funding the migration stuff like that if Gambians are still going to the Mediterranean Sea and every day, many are dying. Same thing happened to our TRRC commission as well. Even those that were part and parcel of the program, who spoke bold to make sure that justice is served, are now running against Adam Barrow. So that tells you well about Barrow's leadership. People like Issa Fall, who were in the forefront of TRRC process, making sure that justice is served, are now running against him. So talking about his lack of political will to move the agenda forward. The CRRC policy document, we all read it. We've seen, some of the allegations that were made and the recommendations that were put forward. But the government is still reluctant, to provide that justice as people deserved. So a lot of this miscalculation probably, to a very large extent, could, discourage, our partnership with those that are definitely, providing that traditional donation, to Gambia.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Sam and Usman. Usman just joined us. Usman, welcome to the show. Yeah,
Yeah,
Usman recently host also a show on Wednesday on this platform. So he's the host of that one. Yeah. So
Hey,
Sam,
Camara, how are you?
yeah,
yeah.
Sam.
Thank you, and Ousmane, welcome aboard. So thank you for that. But
Right.
thanks for joining.
Thank you. And then, of course, Kemo, thank you as well, right?
Yep, yep. So Kemo, thank you so much. I just wanted to first thank you for really joining and getting on this talk show. That's one, and second one is you know. Thank you for dissecting and getting into into politics and our Gambia stand from independence up to now. All the dynamics that you talked about are very, very important and very detailed. And there's a lot into it. There's a lot into it. Just like you said, there's at some point you'll get into some of the details. I just wanted to add a little bit to what you said and jump into some other areas. When I look at our three republics, President Jawara's time, Jammeh's time, and Barrow's time now. If I have to do any comparison, I will say that Gambia was most respected during President Jawara's time. And here's the reason for that. From independence, Jawara came in, it's just like when you're handed a new state to run. I mean, you're trying to find the bolts and nuts and the pieces and bits and pieces of everything to be able to make sure that your people can survive the independence and be able to govern yourself. So that's what President Jawara did. And I think he did a great job there. Now, what caused the coup d'etat? What caused the coup? It's the same reason that happened in all of Africa.
Right.
African countries get to a point, or African leaders get to a point, not all of them, but some of them get to a point where now they lax. They look at their individual interests rather than the country's interests. And the people that they hire to work with them also look for their own individual interests when they come to power rather than the interests of the country. And as a result, they focus on themselves and their families, building wealth instead of building the country. And this is one thing that irritates the everybody in the country. I'll just say that most people in the country. But the only people in the country that can take action is the military, knowing that they have the weapons, they have the manpower, they have the power to do that. That's why they come in and take power, because our presidents or our leaders are focusing on themselves, not the country, while the country people continue to suffer, cost of living, poor salaries, a lot of things, a lot of things that don't go right. And they had the opportunity to fix that, to make it right, but they continue to focus on themselves. This is why military coups take place. So that was the part of the reason why Drammeh and his team came in and took over from Jawara.
Right.
Jawara was a great leader. He was a great leader. However, he had people working for him that were there for the same reason, and for, like I said, just for the same reason, for their individual interest. The people started being corrupt in Jawara's time and doing things that was upsetting people in his administration. This was part of the reason. Again, our security force were ignored. Even now, if you look at them, their salaries, I don't know that a wise person, a wise president in Africa will hold the army to be their best friends. You will make the army your best friends.
Absolutely.
But your best friends.
Right.
Take care of them. Pay them more. Provide better shelter for them. Better, cost of living for them. Do that because they're there to not only protect the president, but to protect the whole country. Right? So if you ignore them, they will get fed up at some point, especially when they see that funds are being misused and there is a wasteful spending when they can't even get a good pair of boots. So this upsets people. This is part of the reason they will come and take over. So but anyway, Drammeh took over, and then from Jawara. And now Drammeh, one of the things that Drammeh did, I think, was he threatened everybody. Anybody that was under his administration. If you steal something, he's going to catch you and put you in his hotel. He called his hotel Mile 2, right? He will take action against you. So that deprived a lot of people and also minimized a lot of theft within his government. But then so that he built, just like you said, Kemo, he built his security around himself to protect himself and self-perpetuation for himself. So as a result, he was able to take whatever he wants. And again, instead of, he did focus on the country by developing and building some things in the country, but a lot of times he has also used funds for himself, especially when after the coup, when the World Bank and the United Nations, U.S. government, the British, when they all gave him a blind eye for doing a military coup, because these governments don't recognize the military coup. I remember, because I used to work at the United States Embassy myself, and when I was there, we had a branch in Banjul that was the USAID, United States Agency for International Development.
Right.
USAID was shut down because U.S. government doesn't recognize countries, military government, right? So a lot of things were shut down for Drammeh. And that's when you said, just like Kemo said, Drammeh went to Thailand, and then he started going to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. He started, finding other connections to help him and fund his administration. So that's where we went into. But again, at the end of the day, Drammeh did some good work. He did some bad work as well. And then I would say that the most disappointing part for me in the Gambia is the Barrow administration. When you get to the Barrow administration, you have all the political parties came together and form a coalition to be able to take the military government out. Well, I won't say military government. They will to be able to take Drammeh out. Drammeh, like you mentioned, in 2016 had this election after being a military leader for a couple of years. Instead of stepping down and going back to the barracks, he decided to run and form elections, and then won those elections. Now, he won those elections, officially put Gambia into
To the global stage, yeah, back to the global
a
stage, yeah.
global, yeah, exactly. Brought another attention to the global team in looking at Gambia as, okay, now they are not a military government anymore. But in the back of their minds, they know that is a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's what they knew. They knew that we have a
Right.
president that is a wolf
You
in
can
sheep's
say that
clothing.
that statement is right.
Yeah, he was the military is the same person that
Did,
turned to
did he did
Democratic.
he actually win the election, or he bought the election?
Well, that I don't know. But let's say that officially he was
That is
announced as the winner
debatable.
of that election, right? So we'll take that as he won the election. But anyway, so fast forward, I think our biggest opportunity for Gambia was when Barrow took over, when the coalition people, that all the political parties came together, or most of the political parties came together, formed a coalition and had an agenda with their memorandum of understanding.
Understanding, yeah.
And Barrow came in as happened to be the flag bearer of that coalition. And Barrow came in. Unfortunately, he didn't stick to the rules. He diverted and did what he wanted to do because other people convinced him to do so, all because of what? Individual interest, not the
Right.
country's interest. So Barrow diverted things that he needed to do based on the MOU, like security reform, the healthcare reform, constitutional reform. I mean, you had all of
Multiple
those reforms
choices.
that were put on.
Multiple choices.
But
Multiple
Multiple
choices at the
choices,
same time.
exactly,
right, but I
Yeah.
just want to
exactly.
I just want to interject here one
Yeah.
second. When we
Okay.
say Barrow, Barrow, we
Yeah.
can actually blame Barrow alone on this. Say that
Well,
we should be talking about the entire coalition, because
Yep. Yep.
the failure of some of those to divert from those things has to also be responsible for other people in the coalition.
Right. So yeah. Like I said, it is the coalition that multiple parties came together to form a coalition, right? So they are all in that together. They wrote a memorandum of understanding, right? When they did that memorandum of understanding, and the president was supposed to serve 3 years, and serving the 3 years, he was supposed to do all of those reforms in that time.
Right. Right.
It is a failure, partly a failure for all of them. They didn't stick to rules, but
Exactly.
then they got to a point where they did not have a choice because the president was looking and leaning towards the constitution that says that anybody elected to be a president, according to our constitution, can serve up to 5 years. So he chose to take the 5 years, which the coalition members, even if they said, no, you're not going to do that, well, what can they do? Can they force him out? No, they're not going to be able to force him out. They can't do anything but to stick with the rule that, yes, it is true. Even though this was a verbal or maybe written agreement that you should only serve for 3 years, but he decided to go for 5 years.
Right.
So that's where we had a problem. Once he decided to go for 5 years, and that in that 5 years, well, most of what was written for the on their MOU were not done. Like I said, constitutional reform. Up to today, we don't have a new constitution, right?
Absolutely.
Up to today, we don't have the good security reform that we're supposed to have. Up to today, we don't have a good healthcare system, healthcare reform. So all of these reforms that were supposed to take place really didn't. Instead, Barrow came in, decided to focus on if you can imagine, all the funds that were pumped into Gambia during days since Barrow came into power. There was a lot of funds that were pumped into Gambia, more than what Jawara had, more than what Drammeh had.
True.
But what did we get out of that? Building roads. We have roads, so we'll thank Barrow for building roads there. Okay, yeah. But other than that, what is the one major impact that we brought? People say that he brought democracy. No, he didn't bring democracy. The voters voted to get Drammeh out so they can have democracy, regardless of who was supposed to be the coalition leader. It was the decision made by the electorates, the voters. So they voted for democracy, and they got the democracy. Barrow is continuing the democracy, seeing that democracy prevail in Gambia. That's his job, and he's doing that. But then cost of living is high. Healthcare system is still a disaster. We still don't have a new constitution. We still don't have a security reform. We still don't have a lot of things that we are lacking. So that's why I said we have a lot of missed opportunities, yet there's wasteful spending. It is one thing to say that we don't have the money, that's why. But we had the money, and the money has been wasted on things that are not a priority to the country.
Misplaced priorities.
Misplaced priorities. Yeah, misplaced priorities. So this is our missed opportunity. That's why I said, to me, this regime is the most disappointing regime for me, based on my personal experience, and not personal experience, but my personal point of view. I think this is the time we had the most money for our country. We could have taken advantage of and do a lot with it, and we didn't. And part of the reason to do, I'm going to end this here in a little bit, is Barrow had two sets of group of people. One group is educated individuals that are very educated. You have doctors, people with PhD in his government, but they are not helping him, right? Either they chose to be one of those people that want to be there for their individual interests, or their education is a good education that they have, but they don't know how to utilize their education. That's one thing. Because there's then the other group is those who don't know what I won't say the word, but those who don't know what they're doing. There are people in there that really have no place in that government. They should not have been in there because they cannot help us. We need people that can help us. And there are people that they are collecting salary, but they're not effective. They're not helping us moving the country forward. They are there to be loyal to the president, to help him win elections, but they're not good for our country. So we look at it that way. So we have people, mixed people there, like I said, educated people there, and then those who are not. But some educated people also. Another thing that I would say to add to this is one of our problems in Gambia, or in Gambians in general, we have a lot of educated people that went to school and achieved good certification or degrees. But our problem is we achieve these degrees, and some don't work where they achieve the degrees to gain some little bit of experience before they go to work. They achieve the degrees, they go straight to work and with no experience, and they don't know how to use their degrees. That's one. And that's one thing that really is affecting us. Others use their knowledge and help write good policies, good rules, and make good things and policies. We make a lot of things look good on paper, but we cannot execute it. We're good on paper, but we're not good in executing what's on paper. So it's at the end of the day, it all comes down to what I said. This is the most disappointing government to me. And I'll stop here for a bit.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ousman can comment, then we can have Kemo, circle back. I think Ousman just dropped. So Kemo, before Ousman comes in, can you circle back? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was a very good rundown of Gambian politics in general. One thing I just want to buttress on was kind of you mentioned about Jaura, being the best for you, even though with his flaws whatsoever, due to the struggles that he faced and standing up with the country and making sure that we have that recognition here and there. Yeah, and also part of his achievements too that I'm definitely very proud of, and which is also very, very rational if you look at this from international relations, theory models.
Yep.
It's his non-alignment policy, during the Cold War period, because you have the liberal world order coming up. Also, you have the communist Russia, trying to convince the other part of the world, including China and stuff like that. So Jaura, diplomatically maintained the non-alignment policy. Russia wasn't seeing Gambia as anti-Russia. The West do the same thing. So he was kind of, even though Jaura was, more or less with the West, but that policy of non-alignment also, spoke well about this administration and the kind of foreign policy he wants to project to the world. And that did not stop Jaura getting funding from all these sectors, which really was really very, very awesome.
Yeah.
So, but education too, he didn't do justice to Gambians when it comes to that, and it was only the few elites, just like you mentioned, who benefited a lot in terms of getting that degree, going to schools, because then you will see only ministers' kids, people from wealthy family backgrounds who will kind of have access to education. So Jawara did not actually did well in terms of that, but for peace, he was among the best. Freedom, democracy, the economy too, wasn't very very strong. But like I said, initially that living condition was okay because the population was very very small. Imagine from independence, it was just around 500,000 people. Growing up to 1 million people, and now we are about 2.5 million people. So moving the country, changing the political trajectory, the history, the economic condition, things were a little bit hard for him. But Jambe really, did some, positive impact, in terms of, strengthening, our educational sector, bringing some, infrastructural development, So those were very defining moments. But the reason why Jambe was also kind of very lucky was then when Jambe was coming to power, it was only one country that kind of ruled the world. We were living in the United States was recognized as the global superpower. Imagine when the Cold War ended in 1990, around 1992, Russia was eventually defeated. The liberal world order was spread, across the world. You understand? So the Western, hegemony grew, worldwide. So Jambe was in that era, but his failure of maintaining, that history, from Jaura to maintain that good partnership with the West was where he kind of failed a bit, even to modernize our educational structure that would suit the Western context. Because for him, anything the West, is he was just kind of anti-colonial, and that is why eventually he even cut ties with the Commonwealth in 2013. So it was basically a very interesting, political history, between the two administrations. But for Barrow, just like you said, he was one of the luckiest He's one of the luckiest president so far. But again, he still underperforming very, very well, and then that is really going to affect, our country's political trajectory moving forward. And I think it's high time for him to be kind of very, very strategic in his approach and be honest, to Gambians. If he's not capable of doing great things for us, it's better we have a leadership that can thrive the country, and then we move forward with most of the positive impacts that need to be done for our country's development.
Yeah, thank you that for Kemo. Before anything, I know we have few minutes before the end of the hour. We want to let Usman also give his 2 cents once he comes in. One thing that I understand from this whole thing is that
Mm-hmm.
each regime, there were things that the foreign countries would want us to do. Remember Jawara's time with the Bara, I mean the Soma Bridge, um, to build a bridge in the summer between Soma and the Bambatenda Bridge. Senegal when he was overthrown by Kukoi, and
Yeah,
that
in 1981. Yeah.
yes, that was one of the things that he had a Senegambia Confederation, and
Mm-hmm.
that was he never really fulfilled that. So
It
that
didn't
had
last long. Of course,
it
it
didn't
ended in
last long.
1981.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
then Jawara never really made that materialize. And then, of course, Abdul Diouf felt like he was, he was punched in the back. So that also hurt because the Senegalese troops came here and helped really make Jawara come back to the country and all of that. They lost a lot of people. So our foreign relationship there was shaking a little bit with Senegal. Now, you have during Jawara's time as well. A lot of, although like when it comes to education, I felt like education was better, even though nepotism was really rampant because that was the time that some of us we would have getting scholarship to go to UK
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
BTCI. Our scholarship were given to the elites, even though our results were the top ones. So those we saw that it happened Jawara's time, nepotism, and then people with the money and then with the status are the ones are given. So that was an issue. But if you look at the GCE, I mean the common entrance exam and the structure
Hmm.
during that time, a Gambian students who studied that time, they cannot be compared to these students
Right. The
after
Gambia college was really very, very good, and people were coming from different
from
part of
all
Africa.
class.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
that time I came from Armitage High School. When you come from those schools, you go anywhere internationally.
Right.
Your educational level, like you is put to test, and then you can people would be like, wow, this guy, is good. Some of the products during those days can't be compared. Right now, these products, the students who came Jammeh's time, most of them cannot even write a good sentence. I mean, like,
That's right. That's true.
the people, when people tell you I finished grade 12, you'll be like, what? Are you kidding me? You look like a kindergarten, or somewhere in the elementary schools. So I think Jammeh changes of that, structure. I don't know what was the cause of it. It was the cause of time, or because he wanted to model something, but that didn't put much pressure on good education, competition, and so forth. Now people, even that's why we don't having good products. Even students who actually graduated in this, grade 12 and all of that. Some of them can even like pass certain exams to even get certain certifications, or probably get schools abroad. So
I,
only few, I
mhm.
mean, few good ones definitely were able to make it through. So education has been actually shifted a little bit,
I
and
think
then
that okay.
lastly, with Barrow's administration, most of these donors who are giving us money, internationally, some of them are using it for, you know things like, like you have to support,
Yeah,
uh,
with conditions.
yeah,
Hmm.
people circumcision, gay marriages and stuff like that. So, you know, you can see there is a little bit, Barrow's administration. There's a little bit, back and forth. Deportation. You have to support our deportation policies in order to get this money.
Right.
So it's also, I don't know how good, or how effective they were trying to sell their agenda while getting these donors and telling them, listen, this is our culture says this, our this is our beliefs. We can't mess that up with anything. We gotta work this way. So that has also been very big challenge for Barrow's government. Now, the lousy thing Barrow's government did was kind of mortgage some of our key things, like our key Mbama Tender bridges, of course, is one of
Hmm.
them, Thailand, and then other things like our fisheries, getting all this Chinese, access, when people coming from other countries trying to, like, take over our main areas, in the Gambia. So that one is cannot be, that one, you cannot even comprehend that, because if you if you are in a position of power, you are a government, you need to look out for the future of your unborn
Right.
children. How is it going to affect them? Not like what you're
Hmm.
going to get under the table. Chinese men come and give you this, under the table. You don't know the repercussion of that project. What is that going to do? They're taking all those fishes and giving it to their animals and, pigs and stuff like that. And we look at Gambia now. You go into the river trying to fish, you barely couldn't catch a good fish. Nowadays, even bolongol men katara danda wala tek,
Hmm.
around bar, you put your hand there, you get, this roll and all that. Nowadays, it's hard to find anything because of the policies this
Hmm.
administration has put in place. And one thing that you guys mentioned, you and Sam both mentioned, before I let you guys conclude this, is that, the implementation part. The implementation, you know, Gambian people are good at writing good policies, coming with good ideas, but they cannot implement. I think, my main problem is that, because we because we I don't think we are patriotic enough to stand by what we said, or what we said we mean. Because if we do implementation, a man is judged by your words, what you
Hmm.
said and what you stand for. So if you cannot imply that or you cannot implement that, then that means those words and those beliefs are not means nothing. So I think this is in our blood that we need to fight. This is not only a leadership issue.
Mhm.
This is individual issue as well. We as a nation, we need to make sure that we are patriotic and we say what we mean and we mean what we say, and make sure that we hold each other accountable for it.
Right.
And it trickle down from top part to bottom down. Because if you look at this government, a lot of things that look at the anti-corruption bill, look at all the things that they stated. They refuse to implement them because why? They just want to make it look good on the paper, but
Yeah.
they don't want to get the work done because somebody's family is affected.
Anything that has some political
Yeah,
implications for them, is
maslaha,
not a
maslaha,
good policy
nigga
to
nyuke,
pursue.
nobody will be
Very
affected.
unfair.
Exactly. So all these things they are the reason why we are not able to
Yeah.
implement anything. So unless and until we can come down to the table and say, you know what we say we mean it, and what we mean we say, and we are patriotic, we have to make sure we do this. We don't have to look at Sam's eye, we don't have to look at Kemo, we don't have to look at my brother, sister. No, this is what we mean. And that this has to be across the board, not only people in leadership. So once we started doing that, we'll see a lot of change. Implementation process will be meaningful. But I will stop here, and then you guys can come in, and then we can wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say my final word. That way, we'll let the guest. We'll give him the honor to wrap up and say his final afterwards. So, which is Kemo. So, but finally, I'm just going to reiterate what I just said. And like Kemo and you, Mr. Sawaneh, were elaborating on, and just like I said earlier, uh, Gambia was most respected internationally during President Jawara's time. Period. That was when we had the best diplomatic relationships with other countries. It was the time that the country was well recognized internationally, uh, uh, you know, uh, uh, by all of these countries. I would put it that way. And the one thing that to moving from that, one thing that I would say is, I think even in Barrow's administration, we forget that we have these international communities sitting right next to us, sitting in there with their embassies in there. You have EU ambassador in the Gambia with the embassy in there. You have the United States ambassador in the Gambia, the U.S. embassy. You have the British High Commission sitting in there. You have the Chinese. You have all of these big power. I'll say the power tree, or like sitting in there, and the rest of them knowing exactly what happened. We have to keep in mind that, and we all know during from the coalition government, when the political parties came together and formed a coalition and took this country from Jammeh, the whole world, EU, the United States, the British, and they all came together. They all pumped money into Gambia. Some made pledges to help Gambia because they saw a different Gambia now. The political parties came together to be able to take a dictator out who they opposed in the first place from his day one. So that was an eye opener. That was our best opportunity. So Barrow came in having the best opportunity with a lot of funds to be able to develop this country with the coalition government, right? So but then we forget that these people are in our country. They're watching. They're listening to news. They're watching what is happening. They know what is being a rumor in the country. They know where their funds are going. They are watching with their eyes when they say that we're going to give you funds for this. They're watching to see if that happened. Where did their funds go? Well, at some point, they're going to cut off their funds. And we're at that point where they're holding on to their money, because if you tell people we are poor, we don't have anything, they give you money, but they don't see you spend that money on the country. Then they give you more. They don't see you spend that money in there the way it was intended. Well, guess what? They're going to cut off. They will sit tight and hold their hands and watch you. And that's what they did. That's why we are franchising our Bambatenda Elitanda Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there have been talks about franchising Gamtel or selling Gamtel or Gamcell. That's why we have all of these things that are happening in our country. That's why we have airport security tax that's being collected. And up to now, I don't know about you too, but I've never seen any budget where they says this is how much we collected from the airport tax. I have never seen any time where the government said this is how much we collected from sand mining that is happening in the country. You know why? Where is all that money going? The international committee knows that all the funds they gave us, including what we are getting from ourselves, is not transparent. We are not utilizing it the way we're supposed to, because if we did from 2016 up to now, Gambia would have been completely reshaped. We would have had a better Gambia. Look at the OIC summit. We were supposed to have a 5-star hotel that would have employed thousands of Gambians in there. Failed. You know why? Because we mismanage our funds, because of lack of prioritization, lack of using the funds the way they're intended. Okay, all because of individual interests. Individuals are benefiting, but the country is not. All of this is part of the problem. We are where we are, and I think it is high time. I would say this: it is high time, and I think a lot of people would agree. When we have something like that, we cannot let it continue to happen. Mm-hmm. We need to change our government. We need to change the government, bring a different leader to see if that person will make a difference. If not, after the first 5 years, we need to change that person too, until we get the right person that is going to serve 2 terms, 2 solid terms. If we have a president that serves 2 solid terms, where their focus is the country, not themselves, I think we will move forward. But until then, we're going to continue to struggle. And if we continue this pattern, I can see another military coup happening, because it's just like going back to drawing board. The reason why African countries are having coups in their countries, the reason why Drammeh and his team took over our country is because of the same thing and the same things that are happening now.
That's right.
So it can inflict all of that to happen, and I hope not. But that's why it's best 2026 election, we make a change. Gambians should make change and see if we will have somebody else that's better, that will come and put the country first, rather than themselves. So this is my final. Thank you.
So who would be your alternative option to that change? Because we have a lot of political parties and processes right now in Gambia. You don't want to disclose that.
Yeah, it is hard. No, I can't tell, because it's hard. Sometimes, you think one person is going to do a good job. They come in and they turn their back to the country.
Right.
We all thought 2016 after coalition government, we all thought Gambia is the best place to go to. Everybody, a lot of people that were sitting in the diaspora for a number of years couldn't go to Gambia. They all flew to Gambia. A lot of people, because we had the hope. Now that hope is no longer there. Why? Because we're all disappointed. So I don't know. I can't, I don't want to say, but I know that there are good people out there that can do a good job. I think, but like I said, I am not going to trust anybody with our country for more than 5 years without looking at their first time. Whether it's Lawyer Dabo, Esa Fall, Mama Kande, Khalifa Salah. I mean, anybody that gets in there, I am going to watch them for 5 years. That's it. 5 years. We are way behind time. We have no more time to waste, and time is not waiting for us. Okay, so we need to watch whoever comes in as the next president. People in the diaspora, we can't vote. We've never been able to vote since Drammeh's time. And up to now, I have not seen a way that we're going to vote. It is a possibility, but we can't vote yet. So our voice is all we have. We don't have a vote to make a difference there. We can't do anything. And we can't leave here and go run for presidency. We can't. Our laws don't allow us to do that. So what can we do? We hope for the best for one of those great candidates to come out and set an example for 5 years. If we see the right thing, we can all support that person and encourage with our voice for Gambians to vote that person in for a second term. If we see that person's first term is bad, we use our voice and tell people, don't vote for him again. That's it. That's all we can do. Yep. Thank you.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, Sam said a lot. Yeah, but definitely, Kemo, you have the final words on this. Based on our discussions, what is your final words on, all the things that we spoke about? And if we left anything that you wanna also elaborate on, you have the floor.
Yeah. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Sawaneh. I think this is indeed a very interesting, but also very timely discussion. And I really want to end by this quotation made by one of my, famous, American political scientist, that is John Miyashima, University of Chicago. He made this statement that, today we are living in the architecture of international politics. Is a very intensive and, of course, competitive enterprise, where every state is, thinking maximizing their own benefits. And I want to trickle this down to what the moments that we're currently witnessing, in global politics. That is the United States' current position, in the world. You know, the return of Donald Trump in global stage, is also another defining moment again. Trump did not do away from his, old policies. He tried to focus on the America First policy, because some of this policy plan that he tried to develop, could not materialize because Biden, swept away all those plans. But he now want to integrate all those plans again back in the system. And one of those, dramatic shift that is kind of going to impact the world very well, is withdrawing the United States, from providing phone to WHO, that is the World Health Organization. And this would definitely have a devastating impact, on small economics, and smaller countries as well. And also try to cut United States funding, in climate change, climate financing. So you see, countries are now kind of struggling to focus on themselves, rather than trying to, focus on other nations. So I think, despite, we might love to have a good foreign policy that will attract external, resources whatsoever, I think it's very, very important and high time for Gambia to start looking at, strategies that will provide income for us internally and be able to export that, rather than focusing on external fundings, because they are not always for longer term. You talk about, US aid and how it helped transform the Gambian economy, but when they cut tight with the Gambia, from 1994 towards early 2000, it was a bit difficult for, Yaya Jammeh. And now with Barrow coming, not completing some of the taxes, not completing some of the promises he made to the world, the European Union, the IMF is rather going to cut or reduce, funding Gambia. So basically, we have no alternative options to pursue. And I think all these are, things that we need to put, into consideration as a country to see, which particular political party or leader comes with a better option for us, and how the world is going to see us, moving forward. So, we really had very interesting political development from Jaura to Jambe, but now this is a defining moment for Gambia to again restructure ourselves, look at our political dynamics, from economic perspective, legal perspective, in making sure that we provide ourselves a country that will cater, and of course accommodate our citizens in a manner that is, dignified, in a manner that will change the status quo, but also in a manner that will, earn us more respect in global stage, rather than, depending on external aids and funding. This is not a long-term policy, and it's something that's really going to affect our country moving forward, with what we are currently seeing in the world, that bigger countries are competing, because currently we are living in a technological warfare. China is not interested in having war with the United States, and of course, US is not interested in having a military war with China. So the world is competing, technologically. So, well, where are we? What is our position as a country, even within the context of Africa? So there are a lot of things at stake, and I think we definitely need to put all those stuff into high consideration. We prioritize our own development, internally. We have options. We take charge of our own responsibility, protect our in territorial integrity. That's the only way we can earn that global respect, as happened during Jaura's time. So that would be my short note, and then I really appreciate your time, and then I also appreciate the trust and confidence you bestowed me, because I think there are a lot of qualified professors in Gambia that can speak on this topic. But I really appreciate the fact that you invite me to share my small thoughts, on how we all see global politics, but particularly within our own Gambian context. I really appreciate that a lot, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
We thank you.
definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. We will invite you again, again on more brother areas as well, because I know you are seasoned, in other areas that we will definitely exploit. But definitely, Kemo, thank you for your time. This has been a great engagement, and I hope our viewers will definitely pick some good stuff from here. I'm pretty sure it's not everything what we say here would be of use to them, but most of the things we said here are actually important stuff. So this discussion is great. Thank you for having you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sam.
Yeah, we really appreciate you very much. Yeah,
You
yeah,
too.
definitely.
Bye
Keep
bye.
up the good work. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. See ya.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Sam.
thank you.
Yeah.